Hi everybody, I'm a teacher here at Aalborg University in PBL, and I actually supervise students' project both on bachelor and master level. Actually, the trip in Italy was the supervisor. I'm Italian actually as a background, but I've been here working here at Aalborg from 2012, so it's some times now. So why PBL? I think all of you know about PBL, isn't it? I don't need to introduce, so I go pretty fast on the introduction. Is that okay? So, but anyway, it's really much, I think I see very much a value in PBL when you work with sustainable development, because sustainable development is to deal with complexity and wicked problems. So the discussion on not having one solution and having problems that actually interrelate with each other is actually one of the PBL is really strong in tackling these type of issues, in helping students in understanding the complexity of doing sustainability or applying sustainability concept. So then I think it's the perfect type of approach to in our education, that we work a lot with sustainable design, sustainable cities. I didn't mention this, but I also teach in sustainable cities and also in techno-anthropology, which are transdisciplinary studies. So that's actually very much fit this area, which is also very hands-on. Also, we live in a world where we have a lot of information. Everybody has a lot of information. So when you now educate students, you don't educate students to be just professionals, because in some form everybody today is professional, and the role of the professional is going down the road because everybody feels more or less knowledgeable, no? Even if, so how do you, what type of professional do you want to get out of this education? I mean, usually you want professionals or students that are able to have a toolkit to identify what is real knowledge and what is not. And also they have the right mentality or government mentality to support social learning and material and social connection, and also foster social progress. So to understand that out there is a lot of people that disagree and have different perspective on the same issues, and therefore you need to be a facilitator when you're a professional. You're not just coming out and say this is the road to go. So that's also a very important learning. And then also the relation with practices, it's helping them to basically understand that it consists of self-reinforcing system in which role of frame, strategies of action, relevant facts, and interpersonal theory of action are bound up together. So so that the students basically get to reflect on the epistemological practice. So what is practice? What are they doing, people out there? How can I improve their practices? How can I learn what they do and therefore understand what means developing innovative practice of developing solution on the base of that practice. Then they develop and integrate different type of knowledge frames, develop and use diversity of tool, visualize knowledge, and the two important things that I think is very important, they remain humble, because then often you have a lot of a problem with young professionals is that they go out of the university and they feel like, I know everything. I'm gonna save the world. And this is actually what this education doesn't do, I think. He mentioned as well, but I mean, they learn that it's not that easy, go outside and actually act in practice. And actually also they learn what does it mean to become an attractive professionals for the working place, which is not that easy for students when they have been closing the wall of the university, because they are two different worlds. And also they learn to work in groups, which in practice it's a very important learning, which universities are not that good to give that. So you know already about the traditional teaching system. I'm an engineer myself, and I come from a mixed learning approach with PBL and not PBL, because I come from DTU, which is a more technical studies, I think traditional in some form, but they try to integrate PBL already. They did a lot of project work, but there is a basic difference on their approach. For example, writing the report. That's one of the things that I had to learn when I came in here, because in reports that you write for traditional system, you have really much about the problem formulation, the design of the research, the collecting the data, analyze, and then write the report, no? And the report have more or less the structure. While instead here in PBL, it's really much about the process. So there must be some more description in the report. There must be space for actually the student reflecting and talking about the project. You can see how Andres is very reflective about what he have done, because that's what they learn. It's a lot part of the learning process, and therefore he's so able to actually explain what he has done and how, and being critical on the process, because that's what they learn differently from the traditional teaching systems. So the PBL, and that's probably you already have this because it's from Mybrid, but students are stimulated into asking themselves, are we approaching the problem in a proper way? And so they are actually stimulated to go back to the problem formulation more than one times, and then so they actually develop critical and reflecting thinking. So, but that's of course great challenges. I mean, this is the linear methods that we give. The traditional approach gives. So the one I expressed before, and this is actually what happens and what is the method of the PBL create, because it's always back and forth. I mean, this is but it could be problematic in sometimes. And so you have challenges for the supervisor, I think. At least from my point of view, I found that it's very difficult to find. I've learned how to do it, but it was at the beginning very difficult to balance between academic, the academic work, the academic level of the student, to providing them academic competences, and the practice competencies. Also because we are academics, so we have been in these walls for a long time. So, I mean, of course we work a lot with planners, we get engaged in workshops and so on, but they actually are more exposed than us. So actually they in some form become also more expert than us to interact with practice. So, and we of course have our network, so in some form we provide that. But how much do we ensure that they develop also academic competencies when they also have to use time to think about the process, they make the group work, understanding practices. And so also like finding the balance between, exactly because of these sometimes uncertainties of which type of knowledge they want to develop or they decide to develop within the project. Also my authority, like you said, no? I mean, I should be humble. I mean, I have to be able to be humble and say sometimes I don't know that. So let's find out together. And so this is actually, I think when you develop that, you maintain that authority when you are humble yourself. So they learn from you. You are the role model somehow. So in some form, that's what is very important, I think. And then you need to be able to go out of your comfort zone, because often, as I said, you don't know that. Or you have to supervise, because we are many supervisors, there are many students. So in sometimes you also have to accept to supervise students that are not exactly on your field. So that's why you are an enabler. You're not the knowledge center, okay? So you are an enabler to help them identify where are the knowledge centers of their project. So you're not just, and then you need to be empathic, and so the challenge is to be able to understand and fulfill student diverse need and expectation. And also about the assessment process, I think someone make a question before. That is complex because, of course, it's not based only on knowledge, but it's also based on qualitative, appreciation of the students' work. So on their process, where they started from, where they finished, what the challenge they had in. And that's create also a challenge of integrating within the assessment process the right sensor. A sensor, so the examiner, the person that comes from outside to judge and help me during the exam, usually is two, one external, one internal. So actually, I had some times where I had problem to have to explain the person coming from another university or from practice that this is the way we teach students. So the way that we assess is different than just project outcomes. Okay, so it's very much about also the process. And then exactly ensuring the professional competencies, as I was talking before. Group dynamics, yes, it's a challenge, and we have students that have problems. But I think, partly I think coming from another country, I think Danish culture is really good in this, and also like from that point of view, they're generally already used to do group work from school, from previous schools, so before the university, so they are mentally used to that, I think. but still you have conflicts, you have people that don't deliver. So in that case, when it's really hopeless, then we come in, but generally they're really good and learn to deal with it together. One thing that I have sometimes, it's very important to be aware, is that students have different way of planning across the process. Some likes to plan at the beginning. Some likes to, go in the field, understand everything, and then come out, and then maybe you expect a very bad report because you haven't seen anything, and then they do something astonishingly good. So it's really difficult to understand how it could be difficult if you're not used to actually understand their timing in respect to the way you learn, and different students learn differently, and they have different routine. And then defining sharp scopes and project boundaries, sometimes they find difficulties because of course they're thrown in the field and they somehow get lost. So because that process is not always working so well, but and then things learned in class always don't fit the project need, might be because the supervisor is not the same that teach in class, so it's a very important thing that you coordinate. So this is actually, so some students really feel a challenge when teachers don't coordinate well. And then, so for example, in the project he was making an example of on agriculture, when you have very large topic because you don't know, they don't know a lot about, then going into the field work, it's a very difficult to find a balance between going in depth and going comprehensively understand the complexity of, for example, sustainable agriculture, what sustainable agriculture is. So this is where the supervisor needs to come in and help them put in boundaries. I think this is, and also one thing that you might be very aware, we should be very aware of, is that students have different disciplinary background. When they come in, especially in our education, they can come from engineer, they can come from social science, they can come from biology, so they have different, or medicine or whatever. So they have different backgrounds, or they have done already the bachelor before. So those that have done the bachelor in our education, of course, they're more used to this type of approach. Others are less. So you need to prepare and you need to identify those that are more weak or they feel more frustrated because they're not used to this. Or even, especially if you come, for example, engineer students often have a very, standardized way of looking at reality, modeling, and maybe when they come in, they might feel frustration on not finding that structure that they're used to. And so helping them to deal with this is a very important thing. And again, sometimes, and it happens to me, that of course theories like, for example, transition or other theories of work design, also participatory design, different professors have different perspective on the same topic, on the same theory. We publish and we also disagree within each other, no? So that also, because the students get exposed to a lot of teachers, it's not just the teacher that teach that then they do the project with, that's also a challenge that they encounter and that sometimes they complain about, but that's exactly what is important, is to coordinate across the teachers. So my recipe to PBL is that working between problem-based and project-based, because the project-based is a bit structured. And so in some form that to basically, help also those students that maybe require a bit more structure. So you need to understand who you're working with, which type of groups you have in front. Some groups are stronger in structure, so you don't need to help them in that. Some students are less strong in this. So it's really like observing, being empathic, understanding. Inspiration from the book of Barbara Chavniaksa, which is from social science research, but we work in a technical education, and I think she does provide very good hint on how to help students structuring, moving from field to desk, so from actually being thrown to the field and how they have to work into working into the project. And actually this structure that I propose to the students is actually inspired from this book. And it's about actually, I help them providing at the first month of the work. I basically ask them to write 2-3 pages within the first month with three key questions about what do you want to study and why do you want to study that and how to study what you want to study. This is actually, I presented to them on the first day they got to know me, and I say, please send me 2-3 pages within a month of this. And the first part, I help them basically write a first draft of the AIMA research question. It's really much about defining the project, which it will change across the project, but it's important that they start writing down this stuff, because more the way to write down, often they get more lost. I mean, not all the students needs that. I mean, you need to, but most of the students they found a benefit from it. And then also the why question is very important, because they really have to write the motivation. What is it for them? And so you realize how they relate to the project they're working. And also in the why question also they reflect about why this project is relevant, why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then how to study what you want to study is a starting reflection on the methodology. So that also, by seeing also how they write and how they reflect and the way they interact with you in this process, you start learning this, understanding the students. So it's a way for to speed up the relationship, because they, in some form, they have to come to you and bring you something to write. Not always working, not always they actually provide you the 3 pages, but often it works, and it's usually with success. So I really strongly recommend to try that. And then I put a lot of focus on the definition of the phenomenon. I have a phenomenological approach. Of course, not everybody have the same approach, but that's mine. And I actually push the students to really, really understand what's the phenomenon they're looking at, and therefore looking into the case study. So the case they're working on, when it's relevant. Of course, when it's about designing and prototyping, is a bit different. But of course, depending on the project, I think them understanding what the project they're working on, or the area they're working on, or the place they're working on is a case of, and therefore of is the phenomenon, of which phenomenon is this case of. Then they start to understand, okay, this is also in the why question, the relevance of, they also think about the relevance of this project for the world. How can I generalize what I'm doing? How can I? And this is very important, I think. And then create a condition for students to present their project ideas and development to practitioner in order to get feedbacks and along the process. For example, in the case of the project they did in Italy, we were lucky enough that the University of Florence allowed them to present their project to students of their peers in another university, and that was, I think, beneficial for them. And they really had the opportunity to think, they had to suddenly, okay, we need to say in 15 minutes what our project is. And this is actually very beneficial to basically start creating boundaries. At the same time, when I see them very lost, I also send them out to professionals, because I'm not always the expert. So I send them out to expert in the field or expert in other universities to make an interview, for example, to make the first interview, so that this person might give them an overview of what are the problems in this field, so that they can actually get a first feedback, a first touch from someone that is very knowledgeable on this. And this is actually a very good start. So another thing that is very important for me, this is for supporting the students, this is for me, is that setting specific learning goals. Of course, usually you have the semester coordinator, with whom you coordinate. And so he coordinates, and so there is set learning goals, but you need to be very aware of these learning goals, so what the students are supposed to do. And then discuss it with them from the beginning, and expectation between each other. So what do you expect? Supervision should be organized as a very dynamic process, as I said, adapting to the student's need. The supervisor should be present, reflective, along all the different phases of the facilitation process to support all aspects of the project work. Avoid, fragmented, merely process-oriented supervision, like be prepared, basically. And be empathic, so sense the students, their needs. understand the students and the struggler, and specifically avoid proofreading, avoid taking control of the project. They hate it. They hate you if you do that. And my last comment, and basically that's my last slide, and that's what I got from this. I often, when I do, that's also another good practice that I learn. When I do supervision, not everybody give me feedbacks, but no, I mean, some students, some groups are just sending it, some others, they don't. They maybe tell me something by person, but I ask them at the end of the project, after the exam, to send me like half a page or a few lines of what they think went good and what they think they went wrong. So then basically I summarize all the feedbacks I got, and I think my interpretation of what they say is that the best supervisor, according to the student feedbacks, helps create overviewing chaos. So it's very important structure. Provides space for reflection, show empathy and support the student to take decision in critical situation, shows engagement and interest, does not provide ready-to-use solution, facilitate the learning process by asking questions and provide good and effective supporting material. So help their learning process. You don't pretend to learn what you know. Does not take control of the project, but leave it to the group itself, and is well prepared and informed. And it coordinates with other teachers involved in education. This is really, really important because it's